This is a reference to a seawatt gaming Minecraft prison video.
You find yourself in an unfamiliar world.
The classic opening to almost every TED puzzle.
In front of you are 3 children.
The text on the roof says valde, bonae, cogitationis, which means in this context, I am perfectly rational.
Each of them perfectly rational.
Remember this for later.
Each child is also guarding one of 3 doors. Behind 2 of the doors is a monster that will rip all of your limbs off and leave you to die of blood loss. But behind the 3rd door is a magic crystal that will give its holder the powers of a god.
This is the setup for the Monty Hall problem, a famous statistical brain teaser.
You don't know which door the crystal is behind, and you can't understand the language the children speak, but for inexplicable reasons you know that they can understand your questions. One of them will always tell the truth, one of them always lies, and if you could ask the 3rd one, they would tell you they always lie.
This is the setup for the 3 gods problem, a classic knights and knaves riddle. True, false, and random.
Don't think about it. Each child is also blind.
This fact is mostly ignored throughout the course of the puzzle.
And only knows what's behind their own door and what their own true or false roll is. But what's interesting is that every time any of them answer a question, they will roll a 6-sided die.
This fact is also mainly ignored throughout the video.
Whichever number the die lands on, they will cycle their truth rolls that many spaces, like so. Of course, if it lands on a 3 or a 6, there will effectively be no change, since after that roll, their rolls do a full barrel roll.
This is a symmetry of the triangle group.
While you and all 3 children can always see the number rolled,
this is not true because the children are blind.
You don't know which way their rolls will cycle. While pondering this problem, you find a brilliantly crafted flute on a pedestal nearby. You take the flute and read the inscription on the pedestal, which gives you important information. Child 1 wants the flute badly, and if you give it to him, he will do anything he can to help you win this challenge and receive the crystal. Child 2 has the ability to communicate in a language you understand using the flute.
The background music here is of a stringed instrument and not a flute.
But only if you know Morse code. Child 3 is skilled in combat and promises she can use the flute as a weapon to protect you from imminent death if you happen to open a door with a monster. Which child should you give the flute to?
This is a reference to The Flute Story, a famous thought experiment used by Nobel laureate Amartya Sen to explain conflicting ideas of justice. It actually makes the question more of a moral dilemma than a logical puzzle.
Since you don't know Morse code,
what if I do know Morse code?
And you're not planning on opening a door with a monster,
what if I do plan on opening a door with a monster?
You give the flute to child 1, believing that even if he's the liar, his perfectly rational actions will certainly be in your favor.
This is a weird choice because all of the children are perfectly rational.
You then stand in front of door number 3 as you and child 1 realize you both have the same idea. Child 1 opens his door, revealing a monster behind it, and you realize that your odds of guessing the correct door will increase if you now change your decision to door number 2.
This is the correct solution to the Monty Hall problem. Once you've learned the information of the location of one monster, switching actually collapses the probabilities in the other 2 doors to a 60% chance of success.
But before you can ask child 2 to open it, child 1's body is brutally dismembered by the monster behind the door. Child 2 runs away screaming, and child 3 takes the flute from child 1's corpse and kills the monster.
This tells us that child 3 is not the liar.
However, when they return, child 2 moves to guard door number 1, child 3 moves to guard door 2, child 4 moves to guard door 3, and so on up to infinity.
A reference to Hilberts' Infinite Hotel.
It should be mentioned that child 4 is not perfectly rational and did not previously exist. Rather, they were a hypothetical future.
He actually should be perfectly rational because he's a superintelligence with an IQ of 99,000.
Superintelligence, which plans to revive anyone in the past who didn't help in their creation into a simulated punishment.
This is a reference to Roko's basilisk, a malevolent future AI singularity.
Since you and child 1 each helped child 4 come into existence, you 2 are spared while children 2 and 3 enter a simulated reality.
Remember, the children can't be wearing VR goggles because they are both blind.
Child 4 simulates the 2 children piloting individual spherical frictionless cows.
This is a mathematics joke that pokes fun at the simplifying assumptions sometimes used in theoretical physics. Not to be confused with the amorphous globosis, of course.
Same altitude on one axis over a Euclidean planet with a diameter of 50 kilometers. Child 2's cow travels at 10 kilometers per day and child 3's cow travels at 20 kilometers per day.
This is most likely a reference to the Jets puzzle by Ted Ed.
Starting on Sunday, child 4 tells them that at some point during the next 5 days they will crash into each other on a day they won't expect. They realize that they won't crash on Friday since making it to Friday will no longer make the crash date unexpected. The same logic eliminates Thursday and Wednesday.
A reference to the unexpected hanging paradox. wherein informing someone of an unexpected event gives them enough information to be certain that the event will never happen.
That they will be unconscious for nearly the entire flight. 4 will flip a coin, and if it lands on heads, they will both wake up briefly on Monday, and if it lands on tails, they will wake up once on Monday and then on Tuesday with no memory of previously waking up.
A reference to the Sleeping Beauty problem.
When they wake up, they have the option to turn exactly 180 degrees without decelerating in hopes of avoiding a crash. They don't know where they start relative to each other, and they're still blind.
Remember, they're still blind.
Additionally, 2 and 3 both have the opportunity to throw each other under the bus. Initially, it is determined that when they crash, they will both wake up injured on a deserted island. If they choose to screw each other over, they will survive the crash unharmed, while the other will stay in a 2-week coma before waking up. If they both screw each other over, neither will survive the crash. Both being completely rational, they each elect to screw the other over.
This is a variation of the prisoner's dilemma, except it's badly constructed. In the typical prisoner's dilemma, the natural equilibrium is double defection. However, in this case, the worst case for defection is worse than the worst case for cooperation. So the natural equilibrium is dual cooperation.
But child 2 is currently the liar, so he accidentally tells child 4 he won't screw child 3 over, and when they both wake up on the flight, they ponder what the odds are that 4's coin landed on heads as they crash land on the island where the only source of food is coconuts.
This scene bears resemblance to the islands in the Ted Ed buried treasure riddle.
Child 3 collects all the coconuts before child 2 gets out of his coma. She says she will only share coconuts with child 2 if he can give a proof that explains why the line between any 2 non-antipodal points on the surface of a spherical coconut will be perpendicular to a line from one of the points to the other's antipodal point.
The proof of this on an ellipse is Thale's theorem. However, he makes a mistake and mentions that the lines are being drawn on the surface of a spherical coconut. In such a case, the angle is always 180 degrees, and this proof is invalid.
Child 2 comes up with the solution instantly, but is still the liar, and
here child 2 remixes Pythagoras' theorem,
thus explains it completely wrong, and consequently starves to death. Is this really a free transaction?
This whole scenario is actually a reference to Vaush's coconut dilemma.
Say that they would be willing to give you said coconuts if you throat their... Now, would you consider that to be a voluntary interaction? Is that a voluntary interaction?
Starves to death. Is this really a free transaction? Child 3 then realizes something interesting. She will always know whether she's telling a true statement or not.
This is fundamentally impossible because it turns her into a halting oracle, and she's now able to contradict her predictions about her own future. Additionally, she still cannot know the unknowables such as quantum superpositions or spins,
and thus can ask herself questions about all of science until she achieves virtual omniscience, which she uses to free herself from the simulation along with child 2, who will now be in a superposition between deceased and revived until directly observed.
This is a reference to Schrodinger's famous thought experiment, Schrodinger's cat, where the cat takes on a superposition of alive and dead.
Child 2 uses 3's trick to gain omniscience, builds
3's trick will work even worse for 2 for the same reason stated earlier. Also, that is a TARDIS from the sci-fi television show Doctor Who.
The time machine to travel back before the entire experiment and kidnaps child 1, preventing the experiment from ever happening in timeline B.
Branching timeline's interpretation of time travel.
It should be noted that only the alive half of the child 2 superposition did this, the dead half did not. Now timeline B is in a superposition of containing or not containing child 1. This causes the newly superimposed child 2B to get revenge on child 2 prime by going back in time and killing his grandfather.
Grandfather paradox, we all know this one.
And producing timeline C, which begins a chain reaction opening more and more alternate universes, all of them simultaneously existing and not existing. Meanwhile, in the A plot, child 3 takes the original child 1's limbs and puts them back together into a near replica.
This is the succession problem, a variant of Derek Parfit's teletransportation problem.
But child 4 has the flute and isn't sure which of the 2 child 1's is the real one. He
The words built from original body parts signals that this was actually a reference to the Theseus ship thought experiment.
Offers it to the child 1 made of the original one's limbs, but he says to double it and give it to the next
Famous TikTok joke, of course.
person. Child 1B says the same thing, and he asks every instance of child 1 in every branching timeline the same question, until child 1-101 tells him to half it and give it to all the previous instances, creating upwards of 2 non-alien flutes across the multiverse.
This calculation is actually incorrect. There were 100 doubles and 1 half. This corresponds to 2 to the 99 flutes, or 630 octillion.
And now the outside of each of these 100 universes is labeled randomly with the numbers 1 through 100. Child 1 prime goes to the universe labeled 100 and opens every universe corresponding with the order of magnitude of flutes in the previous one until he finds the one at the end of the loop with 2 to the 100 flutes.
This section is mostly complete nonsense, but it starts off with a reference to Ted Ed's prisoner box riddle.
Child 1B turns off the lights in every universe. Child 2B turns on the lights in every other universe. Child 3B every third universe, and so on and so on.
A reference to Ted Ed's inheritance riddle, a popular problem in number theory.
Child 2 prime also toggles the lights in every other universe, putting half of them in a superposition of not existing, having the lights on, and having the lights off.
As you watch this video, you actually go into a superposition of understanding and not understanding what on earth is going on.
Child 3 prime tells the first 100 universes that at least one of them contains an instance of child 3, and that an observer in universe prime sees an odd number of universes with the lights off.
This is a necessary addition to the upcoming resolution of the green-eyed prisoner's riddle, but it reminds me of the hat's riddle, where this guy's job is to signal the parity of the number of black hats in the row.
With the lights off. After 100 days with just the given information, the universes 1 through 100 logically determine whether their own lights are on or off.
Here's a typo. I deduced that my lights are 1 instead of on.
And escape the experiment. Child 3b is now adult 3b and solves the Riemann hypothesis.
This is an incredibly famous unsolved mathematical conjecture that has to do with trivial zeros of the Riemann zeta function. Child 3 should actually be able to do this using the previously mentioned omniscience.
Child 3c starts selling pork chops on the side of the street for a bargain.
This one's tough. This is an intra-channel reference that was incredibly hard to source. It's called back to later.
Child 3d
Interestingly, Child 3c's face changes every frame in the scene.
In the cold food hot out eat the
A reference to a made-up Garfield comic strip wherein John says, "Why do they call it an oven when you of in the cold food, of out hot eat the food?" It has no discernible meaning.
At this point, a simulated version of Child 1 starts traveling across a line of universes at a rate of 1 universe every time it expands by 10 universes. Paradoxically, he eventually gets to the end and
So many things are wrong here. This problem is called the ant on a rubber band paradox, and the solution is exactly 100 times e to the 1/10 minus 1 steps, or 22,026 steps for this many universes. He would have to be spending 2 septillion years in each universe for the 5 octillion number to be correct. Secondly, Child 1 is blind and is unable to view the trolley. Trolleys, of course, typically having 4 wheels, but this one is depicted to at least have 5, but probably 8 depending on interpretation.
sees a superimposed trolley about to kill
But yes, this is a reference to the famous moral dilemma, the trolley problem.
5 people. He redirects it to kill one person who just so happened to be child 2-10 to the 44th, which stops the entire chain reaction of timelines.
The significance of killing child 2-10 to the 44th here means that he's unable to take revenge for the death of his grandfather.
He asks himself questions until he determines which door the crystal is behind in this timeline.
Also, never was it stated that the children have to respond in yes or no. Child 1 can hypothetically ask himself literally anything and respond with open-ended answers.
And takes it. The simulation of Child 1 has now become f***ing god.
Interestingly, as confirmed by the Hilberts Hotel reference earlier in the video, there are an infinite amount of children in each universe. Therefore, even if there were an infinite amount of universes, there would not be enough diamonds for each child. The number of diamonds is an LF0 or countable infinity, but the number of children should be an uncountable infinity.
And begins an epic battle against Child 1 Prime, who has another instance of the god
This fight animation is definitely a reference, but at this point I was too lazy to source it.
crystal. Their battle tears apart the multiverse, folding time and space over itself several times until Child 1, in perfect rationale, directly observes
And of course, Child 1 may be perfectly rational, but he is nevertheless blind and is unable to observe Child 2.
Child 2, causing the superposition to collapse, deleting the entire multiverse that was entangled with him. As promised for giving him the flute, Child 1 then hands the crystal to you, both of you knowing it was all part of the master plan. If you carefully follow the logic in any other scenario, you will realize that this is the only scenario where you are guaranteed to receive the crystal.
This is of course a reference to Ted's canonical omniscience. Okay, so who did we forget? Child 3C was the woman selling pork chops for a bargain halfway through the video. This is a reference to an old Mithridac video, a channel now known as Ivory's Cello. I was unable to find the source for this quote, but scrolling the comments, I found this comment, which explains it pretty well. So in an old Mithridac video, a woman he meets says, "You're forgetting something," before stabbing him in the back. So shout out to that guy, and also this guy for dropping the entire word-for-word transcript.